Welcome back, everybody. This is me saying good things about the Wheel of Time. Well, mostly. Yeah, we're back talking The Shadow Rising today, and chapters 24 to 30 is what I read today, and I'll just say this before we get into it. That's the best bit of Wheel of Time I've read so far, by a long shot. Now, is it perfect? No, but I'm just really happy that some interesting things happened, and not too much of the annoying shit. I mean, there's still annoying shit, and I'll get to that, but there was a lot of good stuff here as well, so let's talk about it, shall we? Cheers. Alright, so, as I said, chapters 24 to, whatever it is, 30, and it's basically two bits that we talk about here. Part 1 is the huge block of chapters 24, 25, and 26 about Rand and Mat and whatever happens in Rhuidean. See, I have started to remember the name. Rhuidean. It's unfortunately the name has a weird sound in German. I'll just say that for now. I don't know. So the word Reude in German is mange. The sickness for animals when they lose their pelt and stuff. So having that city called Rhuidean sounds sounds like mangy to me, and that's really funny. But apart from that, that's sort of what happens there. And that's a lot of interesting shit going down. And then we have the long part, which is chapters 27, 8, 9, and 30. And as far as I can tell, it continues there. Well, that's where I stopped today, which is the halfway mark. Is Perrin, Fael, Loyal, and a bunch of Aiel coming back to the two rivers. And, yeah, that's pretty decent. I do, like that. That bit as well. So that's plot-wise what happens, mostly, and we'll talk about each block in specific, and then I'll talk about what I didn't like at the end, because of course there's stuff that I still don't like, right? It's not suddenly become perfect, but I feel, let's do the nice things first, right? And then leave you with a taste of bitterness and ashes on your tongue at the end, right? All right, so let's get started. First of all, we have Mat and Rand coming into Rhuidean, and seeing that city, which is sort of modern in a lot of ways. It is that city in the desert with fog around it, so there's obviously some magic shit going down, and then they find one of the trees of life, the Avenda Sora, which I'm still trying to figure out. But we have once again one of those nice, kind of coming back, remembering shit from earlier ages or our mythology and whatnot, with the mention that Gotham, whoever that may be, sat under the tree for a while. And those of you who have, like both of us, who have at least had a short brush with Buddhism in high school or whatever, remember that Gotham could be Gautama, Buddha, and then the Avendasora tree, or trees in mythology are a big thing, so having that tree of life thing going on there, and that being supposedly the tree where Buddha sat under, although I think there was a Bodhi tree in. I'm not good with that kind of shit, right? I really suck at anything that is vaguely Asian when it comes to mythology and shit like that. It's my failing, I know. Anyway, so that bit was just interesting to have that link back again there, when things are sort of connected in mythology. And that's once again that's an aspect that I enjoy about the Wheel of Time, and having that small bit show up, hey, that's pretty cool. And, well, then, Mat throws, coin, decides not to go into, deeper into the place with Rand, but do his own thing, which he does. And because it's Mat, he does something stupid. So he walks into that gateway that is similar to the ter'angreal portal thing in the Stone of Tyr. thinking that he'll get more answers. He doesn't get more answers, he gets things given to him this time round. His heart's desire, which is obviously to get his memory back, and because he doesn't get it, he gets also sent out. And I'll just drop this bit here as well, because at the end, I still like that aspect. And we just spoke about it, the tree symbology. When Rand comes back from what happens to Rand, he sees Mat hanging there on the tree on a spear. And that, it's fairly Norse mythology. That's almost Odin-style behavior in a way, which is really cool because later on we have apparently Mat with the spear and a broad-brimmed hat walking along a crossroad, so to speak, in a vision that Perrin has. And those of us who know a bit about more Norse mythology know that Odin has oftentimes wandered around with one eye, like one eye patch, obviously, because he's one-eyed, and the broad-brimmed hat, he's the lone wanderer, right? That's sort of like the Odin thing. So having Mat sort of take on some Odin personality here is pretty fucking cool. So yeah, I do like that aspect, even though it's probably mostly me making assumptions here, right? I'm fairly, I'm willing to say that's me making assumptions. Now let's look at what happens to Rand. And that is obviously Rand walks into that forest of like silver stelae, and we kind of find out that a bunch of stuff that is hidden in Rhuidean is in fact Terre Angreal. And he just walks through that, and he has these visions that take him further and further back in Aiel history, to where Aiel history kind of starts. And then he walks out again with that knowledge. And you know what? That was done fairly well, like all in all. That was just really the best bit of writing that Robert Jordan has done so far in this book. Now, obviously, the structure is exactly borrowed from Dune, Frank Herbert's Dune, when Paul Atreides drinks from the water of life and does his thing to become Muad'Dib. He has all these memories of like earlier generations, and to go back these generations through generations, we have that sequence there. Now, obviously, Dune has other emphasis on other things and whatnot. But that's sort of where the structure of like going through like previous memories, living through previous, identities, previous incarnations, possibly. Happens, and that's fine. And even though it's nothing new and nothing original in that way, I can still acknowledge that it is just well done. Those jumps further and further back are really cool. They give us a lot of information, backstory on the world. It's that was like well done. I mean, yeah, we get like basically a huge info dump on the Aiel and the Tuathon and whatnot. And we don't get it as just one guy lecturing to someone else or an excerpt from a book. No, we get it in these like bits that jump back one generation by generation. This is sort of where we see the Dune thing, right? It's like when you look at these like different like generational like flashbacks that Rand has, they usually include two people, and one of them is always the old one and the other one is the younger one. And then we jump back one generation and the older one is now the kid, and so forth. We jump all the way back to the sort of beginning, I guess. Right? So that's where I have this, like, it's still apparently generation by generation, and the other Aiel that is in there with Rand has apparently a very different experience and goes mad. Which, well, I'd just say that the fact that Rand sees the other one suffering more and more and going more and more mad, and still not acting at all on it, not trying to help the other one, right? I'm not saying he could help, but he doesn't even think about trying to. He doesn't even think about it, and that's kind of pissed me off. It's like, come on, what kind of person are you, Rand? al'Thor. Show a bit of, heart for once. But yeah. So there's that, but the whole the whole flashback thing was just done really well. So we kind of know a lot about Rand's background now, or the Aiel background, and the true Aiel, and the Tuathon. So we kind of learned that the actual Aiel were some sort of special servitor caste species, maybe even different from other people, for the Aes Sedai, serving different Aes Sedai, and doing the singing that could apparently help, grow stuff. And that's already pretty cool and unique in a way. We also get it all tied in with, the Green Man. We actually meet the Green Man from Eye of the World. I assume it's the same one, even though he didn't have a name in Eye of the World, or I forgot. But the one that gets sent off in that house in like almost the second to last or third to last, third to last, I think, flashback. Not second to last flashback, I think. Second to last flashback. That's the one. When they come into the room and see the sword Caledon. I keep forgetting the name of the sword again because a problem with way too many specific names that don't make any sense. But, the Excalibur glass sword kind of thing, and the banner of Lews Therin, and so forth. And we see one Green Man who is a Nym at that point. So there's that. A Nym. Sitting there, and he has that scar through his face and lost some of his memory. We see him like in a flashback, in a previous flashback before that, we see him as well. And he's jumping, has the butterflies around him. So I assume that very important meeting with all those old Aes Sedai, they send off whoever that guy is. Their names don't really matter. It's Damien or something like that. That's the one they send off with all their like cool gear and their electronics and whatnot. I assume there's electronics, but the ter'angreal, they send him off with all of that stuff. That's where the Aiel go. And they kind of say that they also have some special quest for the Nym, and I assume that's when they send him off with some of the others. Because there's mention made of some that are not yet fully tainted or anything, of the younger male Aes Sedai. That I assume that's when they go off and create the Eye of the World. But that's obviously not in there. That's me making assumptions there. Obviously. So we kind of see that how the Dark One was freed at the last age when male and female Aes Sedai tried together to create a third source where both men and women could channel and tap, and that going horribly wrong. You could possibly maybe see it as nuclear fusion or something. Who knows? But yeah, they tried that. They actually blew a hole into Shayol Ghul, and the Dark One escaped, and then shit happened. And then we jump back, so I'm going through the story forward now, I guess. Now we jump one further, and you see like the whole thing going down. The Lews Therin, who sounds suspiciously like Lucifer in a lot of ways, right? Doesn't he? Well, Lews Therin goes with his guys and kind of, stops the leakage from Chernobyl, I assume, or whatever it is, Shayol Ghul. And then we jump one further when we have all those people gone mad, all the male Aes Sedai destroying stuff and killing thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, and the breaking of the world is fully on its way, and the Aes Sedai send those people off, and then we follow them, and apparently those Aiel were hardcore pacifists, sworn to not hurt anyone at all, ever. And so everyone, because it's sort of like post-apocalyptic things going down, takes advantage and robs them of all kinds of stuff. And then we see how they kind of splinter into different groups from like over generation and generation into those people that like really stay true to their pacifist way. And then we have one group splintering off that tries to rekindle and refine the song of the Aiel. And I assume that's the group that will become the Tuathon. that are still seeking for the way and follow the way of the leaf, and are looking for the song. And then we have the next group move on, and then we have that situation where we see some of them actually killing to defend or like bring back their sisters and getting thrown out of the group. So they become the what we now call the Aiel, and the rest is the Gen Aiel, who are the true Aiel, or like true pacifists who just follow that main task, which is to preserve all that stuff the Aes Sedai gave them. And they walk all the way across the spine of the world and build Rhuidean to keep all that shit there. And which kind of, all of that stuff now makes a lot of sense. The only thing that's not really explained in here is why they are called the People of the Dragon, but maybe that will happen at some other point. I don't know. So yeah, that's a lot of information on the world and on the backstory that I really enjoyed. Frankly, I enjoyed it way more than anything that happened right now, but there we are. There's obviously still questions in there, but overall that was really fun. That was well done. That was fun. There's jumps from like family to family. That was just great. And now Rand walks out with that knowledge, frees Mat, who has now fulfilled part of the prophecy, which is get the spear, but mostly die and be born again. Because Rand revives him, resuscitates him, and so forth. And then they walk out to do whatever they want to do. So yeah, that was just like well done. I like that. And I like that short nod with the Nym to Eye of the World, and give them that kind of interconnection. That's cool. So once again, well done, Bobby J. Best thing you've done so far in like 3.5 novels. Also, something that is really interesting there, throughout that story, whenever there were gender interactions, they were not as fucked up as they are in the here and now of Wheel of Time. So sweet. Maybe we'll get an explanation for why they suck so much now, but I doubt it. Anyway, that's that one bit. Then we come to the other bit and talk about the good bit there, right? And then the not so good bit and the unnecessary bit. Well, the gang goes through the ways, and for the ways supposedly being this terrible, they sure get used a lot in these books. Anyway, they go through the ways, they come out the other side, there's no wolves because someone who is called Slayer. And I'm sorry, I can't help it, like, every time that guy shows up, in my brain I hear someone scream, Slayer! And certain very memorable guitar tones play in my brain, and I just can't help it, I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure Robert Jordan did not think of Rain and Blood when he wrote that, although it would have been cool. Anyway, so kills all the wolves, kills the wolves even in Dreamland, and we have Rand Perrin do Dreamland jumping around and learning more about the dream world, and then he comes to that metal tower, which I assume is the metal tower that Rand and Mat floated past on the River Pirate's boat. I assume that's the same one. And he meets, I guess, Birgitta, whatever her name is, Bridget, the huntress, I guess, probably, who gives him all kinds of tips and has to run away because, she's not allowed to, and there's prescriptions and whatnot. And, Slayer walks into the tower and Perrin does not. Also, Hopper shows up for a second and tells him some more stuff. And hey, Hopper's awesome. Hopper is the best character so far in this book. I'll just, in this series. I'll just say it right now. Right now, Hopper is my favorite. Alright, and then we just have them, walk down, meet, come into town, learn all kinds of stuff. Tam and, Mat Coffin's dad are hiding in the woods, and Perrin's family has been slaughtered, supposedly by Trollocs, but we find out through a shift of perspective that is obviously Padan Fain, or now Mordeth or Ordith, who did it, and yeah, that kind of stuff. And Perrin gets told all of that, has his catharsis, weeps, at the bosom of Fail, and they kind of make up there, and then they go back into the forest to become outlaws, and well, whom should they meet but Varen Sedai, and another Aes Sedai that we've met before, the other green one whose name are Alana, something like that. Yeah, because obviously there's Aes Sedai hanging out there, and yeah, we'll see where all of that is going. But it's all obviously a setup for like the rebellion of the Two Rivers campaign, and I'm all for it. It's gonna be really cool. So once again, plot-wise, this all was really well done. Now let's look at the stuff that I didn't like so much, and start with something small and very easy. It's like the trip through the ways felt unnecessarily long, because at the end of the day, we've seen the ways now. We've seen it the first time around. It's like, yeah, it's sort of the paths of the dead, but different. And apparently everyone can walk through it. It doesn't have to be Aragorn and gang. So yeah, they do it again. And obviously then there's like a small fight with Trollocs. But that didn't have to be a chapter of like in audio format 30 minutes. That could have just been dropped, because nothing really happens there. So yeah, but that's a minor thing. So yeah, come on, this book is long enough. I can deal with like another 20 pages of fluff. It doesn't bother me that much. I just feel it could have been tightened there, but it didn't. All right, so there's that. Then the constantly annoying thing of that weirdly I don't know, crude relationship thing going on between Perrin and Fael. It's like I get what Robert Jordan is trying to do. It just doesn't really work, or it annoys me because it is so on the nose. It is like it is that filter or like lens that the entire thing is told through all the time, and then we have like a situation when they call him forward because they're at the end, and then Fail is, I just wanted to see if you're healing now. You have that weird, like still weird kind of dominance game going on there. I don't know. It just like felt unnecessary for what is already a pretty cool story. In fact, it makes it less cool because it just doesn't add anything at this point apart from being annoying. So yeah, but that's once again, it's a minor complaint. It becomes more of a large complaint at the point when Perrin actually, weeps and mourns for his family's death. And I do appreciate the fact that his family is dead. That was actually the first time anyone in this book, in these books, actually suffered consequences. Like actual consequences. Because when you look at it, like for the first 3 books, no one that anyone had any reason to care about died or took any serious damage. No one. At all. So that happening kind of shows that we're not just in a children's story. There's actual consequences. There is severe consequences and costs for what happens in these books and for characters' actions. And having that actually driven home in that way, I felt was good, because we didn't get like an explicit violence scene, but the cost is still there. Also, Perrin crying on the shoulder, or in this case, bosom, or whatever you want to call it, of Fael did not disturb me. That's fine, right? That's what you have a relationship for. That's why you have partners or very good friends, to share emotions or to hold you up when your emotions crush you down. That's wonderful. Good one for Perrin. However, in the next scene after that, Perrin is thinking of like how he could apologize for treating Fael so shitty. And he didn't treat her like shit, right? Yes, it was dumb to, send her away and come up with the idea of like sacrificing himself to free his family and all of that stuff. But, look, she was treating him like shit, and he was just stubborn, and now he has feelings of guilt because she was nice to him once. That's not the basis for a good relationship over, in the long term. That doesn't work. don't have like these feelings of guilt driven in for something like that. That's just like, I don't know. Once again, this is sort of like where the toxic relationship advice by Robert Jordan comes in. It's like, don't do that kind of thing. Like, well, he does. So, well, what can you do? So that's one bit that I didn't like. Now there is obviously the question of like on the structural level, whether actually, killing off parent's family in the background so parent doesn't have to think through how stupid it is to, sacrifice himself to save his family. If that's like the best way to handle that, or if it's more like avoiding an actual like decision, because at the point where his family is dead, parent doesn't really have any reason to do the dumb thing of sacrificing himself. So we avoid the moral questions of sacrifice again. I don't know. Well, there it is. But I'm okay with that. It's not perfect, but it is what it is, and I can live with it. The next being small things, like I've spoken about the fact before that the way we talk about religion in these books, or the way we don't talk about religion at all, is not very satisfying for me. And we come to it again, this time around, with two things, small mentions. At one point, either Matt or Rand, I keep forgetting which one, is praying that something will work. He's praying. So to whom is he fucking praying if there's no God? Is he praying to the Creator? And if that's the case, how does he know how to pray? Shouldn't there be some form of religion if he knows how to pray and does praying shit, right? So there's that aspect. And then later, we learn that the White Cloaks are burning books for blasphemy. And this is not going to be one of these arguments of, or it's connected to, but I feel it's different. The argument, that we had, or not had, or some people have, and the Critical Dragon has a wonderful video on it, which is like, how can we use words in here that have no room in a fantasy world? The well-known Achilles heel, or or others like that, in a fantasy world, because they break immersion. This is connected, but I think worse. I don't mind the other kind of thing normally, but this one is blasphemy means sin against God. And if there's no God, and the White Cloaks are not a religious organization, they cannot, the act of blaspheming does not exist in Wheel of Time unless there is a structure of faith somewhere. So yeah, that's just annoying me because, it is there and it is not there, and he just never really commits to either way. And it would be totally fine to just have the White Cloaks be a religious gang of thugs. I could live with that. That would be, decent. All right. What else to be looked at? I still don't like the two rivers because they don't work the way. And I assume, so I'm making a claim here, the two rivers don't work like the Shire, even though they're supposed to be sort of like the Shire, right? They don't work like the Shire because Robert Jordan is not, J.R.R. Tolkien. Obviously, that's a dumb statement, but I'll try to elaborate. Robert Jordan, so let's start the other way around. J.R.R. Tolkien, writing about the Shire, has a slightly ironic tinge to his descriptions of the Shire. Everyone there is living in happiness, living the life of what you might call, or those that we meet, what we might call the gentry, like sort of landed nobility or lower landed nobility or whatever in England. And they're extremely conservative. They're also extremely stuffy and a lot of other things. When you read The Hobbit, or you read the first bit of the Lord of the Rings, it is fairly clear that Tolkien, when he's writes about it, has this like sort of loving but also critical or whatever like lens when he talks about it. He's aware of how ridiculous a lot of that stuff is. He just kind of loves it because of nostalgia, in a way. And that's why the Shire kind of works. It's like, yeah, it's nice to have a place like the Shire because it kind of shows us that it's worth fighting and whatnot to save those people, their ridiculous privileges and whatnot. Now, it's not something that I subscribe to, but that's sort of like what you get from the Shire in Tolkien. It is ridiculous. Those people are stubborn and a bit, childish in a lot of ways and don't see full on, consequences and what have you. But it kind of makes sense in that context. It has that very weird British ironic tinge to it. There's words that I can't remember right now that would describe it even better, but it doesn't. I just can't think of them right now. But that's sort of what we get with Tolkien. And Robert Jordan is not a privileged Englishman from the late 19th century. And he completely lacks understanding. He lacks understanding of that specific perspective, that specific lifestyle that is almost parodied in the Shire. Like fond parody is what I would call the Shire. He lacks understanding of that because he's not from there. And that's why the entirety of the Two Rivers doesn't make any sense, because the people are as backwards and ridiculous as the hobbits in Lord of the Rings, but at the same time he's trying to make them out something that hobbits could never be. And those two things, those two perspectives clash. And they clashed at the beginning of the book. At the beginning of Eye of the World, when we come to town, we meet all those characters and they all feel like a bit like caricatures, and you can basically tell which one is Ted Sandyman and you can tell which one is, which one is the Sackville Bagginses and whatnot. You can do that almost like 1-to-1 when you go through that village before. Now Perrin comes back, and the idea of like coming back but not being able to actually fully come back, what is sort of the thing that we see at the end of Lord of the Rings when Frodo and Sam come back, and Frodo just never fully, can fully come home because he has too much trauma from the war, which once again is something that, in general, both Jordan and Tolkien should be able to understand. Tolkien being a veteran of World War I, and Jordan being a veteran of Vietnam, right? They know that when you go out into the world and have traumatic experiences, that will leave an impact on you. That will leave something on you that you can probably not really fully come back. But it kind of works in that melancholic way in Lord of the Rings. It does not work here when Perrin comes back, and you just like feel how fucking ridiculous people like Sen Bui are. Those are not characters. And I see what he's trying to do, but he just doesn't grasp that you can't transform, can't actually write that kind of thing in the Wheel of Time world where it doesn't really fit. And that just kind of came across extremely harsh here, especially with that whole like dumb, like the Wingman's Circle versus the Men's Council, and it just doesn't really work for me. I don't know. It just does. It feels like he never really thought that through. It's unrealistic to a point that other parts of Wheel of Time are not. Maybe because it should be. It's so in your face dumb. So yeah, there's that. And the final thing before we stop this for tonight is Mordith. And that's sort of like the general like depiction of evil. And it's like, yeah, I know what you're trying to do, but like that all your group is all about murdering stuff, and you have a bunch of white cloaks, but you have corrupted them so far that they're all dirty and shit. It's like, oh, fuck's sake. If you're trying to, be a traitor or whatever, why would you let your part of the army go to, wreck and ruin at the same time where it's visible? You're supposed to be fucking traitors. Behave like them. Don't behave like fucking sloppy kids. It just annoys me because it's like, with someone like Padan Fain, Mordeth, Mixover, whatever, you have a fascinating character because he's now way more than just the dumb dark friend. There's like actual motives in there somewhere. They're apparently extremely insane, but they're there. There's there's potential there, and then he still behaves like the dumbest cartoon villain ever, and so yeah, just annoys me to no end because there would be so much more potential. There's actual potential with what's his name, younger Bornholm that we met before in Berlon at the beginning in Eye of the World. Him sort of figuring out that stuff is probably not the way it is. There's actual nuance in those characters. I like that. I just hope Robert Jordan is able to actually do something with it and give those people some form of, like, not redemption arc, but some form to actually play out those nuances of Bornholm, drinking alcohol apparently, which is maybe not allowed for white cloaks, something like that. Who knows? But yeah, having these things happen, I just hope he does something meaningful with it and doesn't let the whole thing just like fall apart again. Oh yeah, and obviously Lord Luke, who's hunting the horn, and is obviously Slayer, right? I mean, I don't know right now, but I guess Lord Luke is Slayer, and at the same time is very much another one of the Forsaken, obviously. Which one? Who fucking cares? I don't know. I don't care. We'll see. But that's sort of my predictions for now. We'll find out that he's a Forsaken. At some point, Perrin has to face off against him and sort out that whole knot. And I hope this happens in this book, because this would definitely make for interesting reading in the coming days. But I suspect that in my next video, which will either be tomorrow or on Monday, depending on how I run these things, I guess we'll be coming back to the girls, which is Nynaeve and Elaine in Tanchico. So we'll see what happens. But once again, compared to everything before, these 6 chapters that I read today, 6? I think 6 chapters or 7, those were the best so far, because there wasn't that much potential for Robert Jordan to fuck up, and then he actually handled the flashback scenes with Rand in chapter 25 and 26. He handled those well, competently. Thanks for that, and thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Until then, cheers.